Okay, first things first, if there's large noise coming, my neighbors upstairs are doing some drilling at this time. I don't know why. But it is what it is. So sorry. I will cut my mic off as soon as I can. But the Zoom's control is still very confusing to me. I'm very used to BlueJeans. Okay. So topic is, what the heck do I do? Very broad topic. In essence, this fellow, our, what shall I call it? Babu Bhaiya slash, I don't want to dox him on recording, but whatever. But people ask me, what is DevOps? What do you do as SRE? What does the work entail? And I thought, okay, let me try to explain what do I do. And bear in mind that DevOps is still, although it's close to a decade old now, but now it's getting mainstream. So anything and everything gets attached with the DevOps. So there's a lot of things people do differently. So we'll cover that. If you have any questions, you can, I don't know how to, probably you can drop, you can just ask in Zoom, I guess. How do I show the Zoom chat? Okay. I can see the chat. You can ask a question. I'll repeat the question and I'll try to answer. Okay, all good? Take care. So I don't know how many people know me, but I guess most of them do. But for the people who don't, so I'm Satya. My full name is Sathyabhat, but nobody calls me that because it's way too long. So Satya it is. I've handled quote unquote DevOps at Adobe. I say quote unquote because at Adobe we have this thing where we have a business title. The business title is your external facing title, and we can put that title to whatever we want. I can put DevOps Ninja, I can put Unicorn Herder, I can put whatever I want. It goes to my manager will approve it, and then that's it. Yeah, so it's like I can literally put whatever. I can put as stupid as, Bill Gates' best friend at Adobe. Like the only person stopping that would be my manager. If you have a good enough relationship with your manager, I think you'll find it very humorous. Officially, though, your role is divided. It's gets a bit murky because they've been changing and revamping it a lot. Officially, my work title is a software development engineer, SD. So we have different levels, SD 1 to 5.5, I think. And beyond 5.5 is like you're getting into the architect slash principal architect, that types. But let's not get into that. That's a different thing altogether. Other miscellaneous work is I am an author of a book called Practical Docker with Python. It's available on Apress. It's also there on O'Reilly Learning, aka Safari Books. And of course, it's always available at your friendly torrent website, wherever it is. I have an email on Google, rather I have a Google Alerts to remind me of when it pops up on a new site. And believe it or not, every day I get an email like, hey, this unknown site I've never heard of. Virus is rampant, but it's okay. If you really want a copy of my book, just ping me. Please don't torrent off it because I don't want your system to get compromised. I'll give you the book for free. As an author, I get 10% of the royalty of the book, and that the book retails at what I think it's about $28 to $30. So you do the math. It's not really enticing for me. I'm also an AWS Community Hero. Community Hero is a title awarded by AWS for work across the community. And this comes because of my involvement with the AWS Users Group Bangalore. And so I've been working with the AWS User Group Bangalore. I've been volunteering rather, not really working. I've been spending my time on the AWS User Group Bangalore since, I don't know, I think four and a half years now. Done pretty much everything, organized meetings, arrange for speakers, arrange big events like the community day. We have another community day coming up, which is being organized virtually. So awsug.in, that's where you have to go to register. And unlike previous community days, this time it'll be virtual and it'll be free. So sign up. And if you want to put in a talk, well, you have less than 24 hours before the CFP closes. So hurry over. Okay, so like I said, I do quote unquote DevOps. So people ask, what is this DevOps thing, right? I have an extremely long and verbose, detailed statement. I've taken this from AWS because for all practical purposes, I consider AWS as my reference, just because for the amount of work I do on AWS. You go to everywhere else, there'll be a lot of different and confusing definitions. Some people don't know what DevOps is. Some people say DevOps is development and operations, but nobody knows what development and operation means. Some people say, DevOps is about setting up infrastructure. Some people say DevOps is looking after things, and there's a lot more to that. But in essence, DevOps is what is known as a collection of philosophies and practices. Basically, the aim of DevOps is to reduce the barrier and to reduce the friction. Why is that? That is because you need to go back in, I guess, few years back, 5 years back, 10 years back, 15 years back, wherever it is. Even now, a lot of organizations still have this barrier. In the ye old days of no Scrum, no Agile, waterfall model, you have a standard this thing. What would happen was you have the development team, you have the operations team. So the development team would work for 4 months, and then after that they're like, okay, we are done. And then the operations team had to pick up these changes and work on deploying it. Because, and I just say 4 months as a loose term, it can be anything. It can be 1 month, it can be weekly, whatever it is. But there's no concept of automation, right? So my first job, I used to work as, when I joined as a trainee, my literal job was to zip up patch files, SQL statements, whatever it is, make up zip files and send it over by email. That was my literal work. And that explains why I had so much time to spend on Stack Overflow and whatnot, because literally I had nothing else to do. And, I grew up on the virtue of asking for more work rather than keeping quiet and doing nothing. But that's a different story. But that's how software development and deployment used to work. Dev team would do something, then the operations team would zip it up, they would unzip it, then they would copy paste it manually or whatever it is. Right? It will take a long time, and if things broke down, they're like, something is broken, and there's this always friction. Like, the dev team doesn't know what ops is doing, ops doesn't know what dev is doing, right? And something doesn't work, the ops guy will be like, I don't know this shit, not for me. Go back to the team. And there's a lot of back and forth. So there's a lot of time involved. So basically, DevOps tries to bring down this friction and bring down the walls by saying, we will enable sort of practices, tools, and philosophies which to increase the deployment velocity by using things like CI. What is CI? CI is continuous integration. Basically, whatever changes that you do, it gets tested right away by automated tools. And then this concept of continuous delivery, which means at any time, your software should be able to be in a state of being able to be deployed at any time, and it must be clean and green every day. Okay, so that's what DevOps aims to. The way people try to get this is different, so I'll get to that in a minute. But I hope at least this makes some sense of what DevOps is supposed to be. DevOps is not. There's a lot of debate about this, about DevOps not being a title. Unfortunately, the way HR works is that unless there's something to show you, they can't proceed it. So DevOps has become a title. You have people, you have solution architects who with like 3 months of experience. You have DevOps ninjas with so-called 10 years of experience, but all they have done is just read up the DevOps philosophy. That's it. So why and how that is, it is in a current state of market. Let's not get into that. But I hope at least now there's a little bit of understanding of what DevOps is. Right? It's basically a culture and a collection of philosophies, practices, and tools. Okay. So this is the ideal DevOps state, right? You have someone says, "This is what I want. Make it so." This is ideally what DevOps. When you hear of DevOps, this is what you practice. This is what you think should happen. Someone will say, "This is what I want." You press a button, and it happens, right? Unfortunately, we know that that's not true. In practice, in reality, there's a lot of things because of tech debt, because of various reasons, because of regulations. You can't just do that, right? So in practice, this is what happens. Before you get into DevOps, you're all handsome, this and that, and a year into DevOps, and you're like, I'm done with this shit. Fuck, get me out of here. And why is this so? This again comes back to the philosophy, because people don't know what DevOps means. This is what I call as an alternative titles for DevOps. This is completely something which I came up with, and you'll see around in the market. So, and the reason is, again, because DevOps means different things to different people, different organizations. So you will find other various alternatives for DevOps engineers, site reliability engineers. In practice, Google is a term which came up with site reliability engineering. It means that they have people who do the dev side as well as the ops side in roughly about equal percentage. Of course, now SREs have mutated it to mean people who can, ops engineers who can do a little bit of coding. By coding, I mean shell scripting, some basic general programming using whatever language, whatever dynamic router language. Google, however, has an extremely strict definition of SREs, which is basically they need to be production. They need to be software engineers, the architects. They need to know, they need to build up from scratch. Just on the pure basis of this, I do not call myself as an SRE because I am okay-ish in programming. I'm not really that good in algorithms and whatnot. As per Google's definition, you must be really good with reversing binary trees and whatnot. But again, Google is a different state. The problem is that people apply a lot of Google's philosophies to their scale, which doesn't really make any sense. I remember this one time I went to an interview. There were like 6 people. I was talking to the co-founder / CTO, whatever it is. And he was asking me, how much do you do by doing? What is your scale like? Why are you changing and whatnot? I said, we do about like 1,000 requests per hour. This was at my previous job, not at Adobe. And to his credit, he said, okay, then I don't think you would like it. I'm like, why? What is your scale? These guys were doing 6 requests per hour. And I swear not, they had more EC2 instances than they had requests coming in per hour. And he's talking about things like gRPC and thrift protocol. And I'm like, you're doing all of this for 6 requests per hour. He's got iPods and Macs, and I'm like, okay, this is now I know where all the VC money is getting wasted. So why is this all relevant? This is because this is what happens when you apply SRE philosophies to small scale stuff. It doesn't make sense. Sure, you can say that, I want to, you can say that for future proofing, this might help, but future proofing is something which you can never do. You can sort of plan for it, but applying it right away, I mean, is stupid. Anyway, that rant aside, infrastructure engineer is something which you hear quite often. And I think this is a pretty decent definition because it tells you what you're doing. You're supposed to be the guy or the girl who builds infrastructure. By infrastructure, you mean whatever it is, the instances, the backing data stores or whatnot. There's at least a little bit of clarity in what infrastructure engineer means, right? Unfortunately, I don't like this title again because of the way HR and hiring in India works. Basically, if you've been working long enough, you know that once you get associated with that tag, you are practically going to live with that tag forever, unless you do really, really good job to get rid of that tag, or you've been working remote, or you're really, really good. There are a lot of people in the Slack or wherever else in the world who can get rid of this tag, but let's be honest, bulk of the people will not be able to get rid of this tag. So I myself faced it. I started off, like I said, I started as a patch guy, and then for a longest period of time, I was working as a database engineer. It was really, really hard for me to get rid of that database engineer / DBA tag. Even to this date, I've not worked on databases or as a DBA for like 5+ years, and I still get job offer saying that, hey, we want a DBA, you worked on PL/SQL and Oracle, join us. I'm like, dude, it's been like 5 years. I don't know shit about this. Why are you sending it to me now? Oh, we saw you on your LinkedIn. I'm like, all right. Okay, so this is why, so having a title like infrastructure engineer sort of shoehorns you into one specific title, which is, again, I don't like it. Platform engineer is another thing that I have seen. What is a platform engineer? Nobody knows. It's like nobody knows what the platform is, to be honest. It's like, are you building a platform based on EC2? Are you building your own platform? But it is. The thing is, with broad titles like this, it's very easy to hire people. It's very easy to lure, especially new people, like, oh, I'm getting a shiny SRE or platform engineer, and you will end up sitting and doing desktop support. Why? Desktop is also a platform. You have to sit and do this work. It's happened. I'm pretty sure you would have heard about this at least, right? Another common term: cloud engineer, cloud architect, cloud ninja. Again, this is sort of broad enough, but again, it ties you down to cloud, and then you can also replace cloud with AWS or Azure or GCP or whatever it is. Again, it sort of ties you down, choosing it down. And this is my best thing of all: Jenkins architect, GitLab architect, drone architect. This is what I call way too much of a narrowing down. It's like, you labeled yourself as a Jenkins architect. Okay, fine. Now Jenkins has come up with Jenkins X. What happened to your this thing? All your work has been invalidated, right? You may still know but from an HR's point of view, you don't know that. So, which is why I sort of hate these XCV titles. And the best thing of all, which I reserve as my trademark, is called professional shit cleaner. Professional shit cleaner is what typically DevOps people are made to do. Something's not working, fix it. Git checkout not working, fix it. CI not running, fix it. Desktop not working, fix it. In essence, all these names get smushed into one, this professional shit cleaner. So if you ever come across any of these titles called platform engineer, cloud engineer, SRE, DevOps, ask them. Your first question should be, what the heck am I doing? That's what you should be asking. Because what I am going to explain of what I do might be completely different from what the expectations are. Akash Singhal asks, platform engineers mostly backend people, right? Not really. You may have assumed it to be mostly backend people, but across the industry, I've seen it as people who are maintaining the platform itself. In this case, for example, the orchestration platform. Your Kubernetes is an orchestration platform. So people who run Kubernetes engineers are also known as platform engineers. And I've seen this in practice in a different org in my company, as well as in the industry as well. So 20 minutes in, I've told you about DevOps, and none of you still know what DevOps is. So welcome to my life. It's no easy to say it. So that's why I keep saying the easiest way to say what DevOps is just to say that, it's basically a combination of cultural philosophies, practices, and tools. Keep this in your mind. This is what will help you in trying to make sense of DevOps. Any questions? No? So let's get to more specific details about what do I do anyway. So, like I said, my business title is I have labeled myself a senior DevOps engineer, and that's because that title carried out from a previous job, and I have sort of stuck to that. And I don't know what to call myself. I don't want to call myself SRE. I have a colleague who's named himself as DevOps, SRE. I'm like, wow, brilliant title. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. Let me just stick on to DevOps, because I guess that's sort of what the industry understands. So in practice, what do I do is I pretty much work on two modes. One is known as the on-call mode, and one is the everything else mode. Okay, but before I get to that, what do I do actually? So I work as SRE/DevOps for product/platform. So I'm part of the team which runs the API gateway for all of Adobe. So basically, any request coming into Adobe services, be it via Creative Cloud, Lightroom, whatever it is, comes through our infrastructure, and it forwards it to the backend services and so on and so forth. So in addition of being the API gateway, so API gateway basically lets you do things like manage API keys, handle threats in terms of blocking malicious attacks, things like that. This is sort of a very simplified version of what our architecture looks like. Basically, we have an ELB fronting us. The ELB is behind ELB. We have a bunch of EC2 instances. The EC2 instances runs Nginx and OpenResty, which is a framework of Lua. A request comes in, it is handled by the EC2 instance. The EC2 Nginx then validates it. Our custom Lua code checks if the request is valid or not. It does it by means of making a lookup to a Redis to see if it's got a valid API key, if it's got a valid token, checks it, and then if all is okay, then it connects to the upstream service or the upstream backend. By upstream, I mean to the actual service. So for example, when you log into Lightroom, you might enter Lightroom, but behind the scenes, Lightroom is talking to us, and then we are processing it, and then we are forwarding it to actual Lightroom backend service. This is just a very simplified view. In practice, there's a lot of other finer details running. For example, we run across multiple regions and multiple clouds. We run AWS as well as on Azure. We run across 4 regions in AWS and another 4 regions on Azure. So it's 8 regions. And we are extremely performant. When I joined, we were doing something like 2 billion API calls a day. Last year, we were doing 20 billion API calls, and that's billion, not million. And I think our last stats, we were like doing like 30 billion API calls a day. So if you do the math, it comes to around something like 250K requests per second. So suffice to say, if, the data system is quite resilient and performant. In essence, it's my job to ensure, me and my team's job, it's not just mine, it's my job to ensure that we have very little downtime. We have a publicized SLA. SLA is a service level agreement. It's basically a document which says that we will try to keep the service running at this designated time. We offer 4 nines SLA, which is a 99.99%, which basically means that we can afford to have a downtime of a maximum of 45 minutes for the entire year. So that comes to about like 4 minutes per month, I guess. Yeah, something like that. So as you see, downtime is strictly not allowed. And of course, think about this. Since we are the face of Adobe, imagine we had this huge outage like last month. You would have seen it on last month or maybe 2 months back. You would have seen it on sites like Register. Basically, people are not able to log in, and it was not because of the gateway's fault. The gateway then talks to the identity service. The identity service had the issue, and we had to soak up all the pressure. And because we were not able to validate the keys, we were sending the request backs to preserve the identity service. So this is just an example of the interaction, and this is basically the general structure. On Azure, it's more or less the same. Instead of ELBs, we have standard load balancers. Instead of EC2 instances, these instances are running in ASGs, obviously. Instead of EC2, we have VMSs, or the virtual machine scale set. Instead of Elastic Azure Redis, we have Azure Premium Redis. Azure has been really, really painful. I can go on ranting about Azure for a long, long time, easily 3 hours plus. We've had a lot of issues with Azure. But we have done a lot of hacks and workarounds just because Azure has been so unreliable. The saving grace for us is that Azure traffic is really, really minimal compared to what we do on AWS. That although it is expected to increase soon enough, but thankfully because of things, we don't really. Even though we see a lot of pain on Azure. it's not very obvious, and that's actually a bad thing because Azure's the number of times Azure goes down, we don't see a broad enough impact, and that impact doesn't really go upstairs. So we can't really say, look, Azure is so bad that it causes much, just because of the sheer traffic that is handled by the AWS. So coming back to my work, so this is sort of what the application looks like, and this is my job. Well, part of my job to ensure that if something goes wrong, I'll get to that. So like I said, we have on-call mode and we have everything else mode. Since we have this 4.9 SLA, we need to ensure that things are going straight and going smooth. So being as part of being DevOps, one thing that you need to understand and you need to ask right away is, do you have an on-call or do you have 24/7 shifts or what? A lot of people hide this. A lot of teams, a lot of hiring managers don't make this clear, because to them it is understood that if you are working as an SRE, as DevOps, you are expected to be available 24/7. And the next thing you should ask is how many people are there in the team? Because if you're the sole DevOps person, and if you're expected to be available 24/7, what will happen when you want to take a break? You want to take a vacation, you're not well, what will happen in that case? Are you still expected to fix? So these are things you should take care of. In terms of team, our team is relatively small. We have about 7 people, including my manager. Prior to moving to Romania, I was the only one working from India. Most of the other people were in Romania, and we had one person in Canada. Right now, I'm in Romania, so most of us are in Romania, and one person is in Canada. So the way on-call works is, for 1 week, one person remains on call, and that person is supposed to take care of everything. So in on-call mode, it's also known as on-call and support, because we are an API gateway to our internal clients as well. They ask us questions, and we are supposed to we were supposed to answer them, but things are sort of changing. I'll get to that. So in on-call mode, I call what I say is Spidey sense. Basically, you have to be alert all the time, because there are SLAs associated with how fast you can get into the call. Another thing for you to make a note of and ask what entails, what do you mean by on call? What am I supposed to do? How fast am I supposed to come on, be present? So if it means that at 4 a.m. you get a call, you have to be up, you have to answer it, and you have to be there for debugging, for fixing whatever it is. So in on-call mode, Spidey sense is enabled. You have to be extremely careful, or rather you have to be extremely alert. Anything which might seem like a small problem, a latency deviation, you need to check it out immediately, because it, especially at our scale, it can snowball into very it can snowball into huge things. For example, we have some what do you call it? We have some deviation monitors for latency. We monitor latency. Usually, it's within I would say double-digit milliseconds. If there's a service which is handling badly, then the average latency goes down for all of it, so that becomes a snowball effect, right? So things like this are something which you have to, which we are supposed to take a look at, because you don't learn this from day one. You pick this up slowly as you gain more and more experience, and these are sort of things which you pick up when you work at scale, right? It's really, you can't really learn this on the job. Or rather, you can't really learn this when you're practicing something. These are things which you learn on the job as you do more and more skill. So yeah, when something goes wrong, you get paged either by a PagerDuty. We also have a dedicated team called the Network Operations and the Technical Duty team. They ping the on-call people. They set up a war room, and you're supposed to A, find out what's wrong, B, fix that, C, fix it for good. Yeah. So first thing first is, like, you have to fix things. Why? Because availability is above everything else. It doesn't matter if you have to manually go and reboot 5 servers or 20 servers, or automate that reboot process. If that reboot can fix it, go fix it. Once you fix it, then the whole RCA and the postmortem process comes a little later. For on support in the support queue, we have like I said, we have some internal support queue. Usually, our customer success managers handle a lot of the what we call as level 1 support. Basically, things like why is this not working, why is that not working. For more advanced stuff for which they don't have access to, for example, if a client wants to set up a peering with us, then it comes to us. We do that first. My other thing is like the everything else mode. So the time when we are not on call, things go as usual. We work the agile way. So we have sprints. There are a bunch of things that we need to do. The work can be anything from improving the developer tooling. For example, you might be your current deployed tool might be broken. It might not be working as expected. You might be expanding to a new region. You might be doing some POC of a new fancy thing. You might be moving to a container orchestrator. So these are things that you might be working on. So you pick up prints, some stories in the sprint. You pick up some process or developer tooling. You do, if you are part of an incident, or if you're part of an outage, then you're supposed to do a postmortem and RCA. Why postmortem and why RCA? These are two separate things. In RCA, you're basically trying to figure out what actually happened and why it happened. In postmortem, you make a list of what was the reason for that and what you're going to do to improve it. It's important to note that you don't necessarily have to fix it right away. You do things like, that's where the sprint stories and all you come into it. You say that, okay, this is what we found out and we will be fixing this later. And basically you get shit done. You build a new fancy. Okay. So that is in essence of what I do. What does the app look like? It's like I said, something like this. That's pretty much what I do. Long story short, if the app works, well and good. Try to find ways of improving it. For example, right now, the way we do a deploy is we have automated deploy pipelines, but they are linear and they are sequential. So I can't kickstart a parallel deploy across 5 different regions. So I need to do it one region after the other region. So right, a way of picking up this program, make it parallelize, things like that. So these are things that you have to keep working on. If you had an outage, for example, you need to figure out things. For example, we had a Redis-related outage, then try to come up and brainstorm with ways of mitigating this. For example, we found out an Azure Redis goes because of Azure's network updates. They can be network loss for anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds. So what do you do in that case? So we try to find out ways of fixing this. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do. If you have further questions, just ask in the chat. Anything else? If you want me to go detail into what do we do, what is the tooling behind, let me know. I can answer that in detail. There are some questions in the chat. Let me go through them. So Mithun asks, why EC2 for gateways instead of PaaS like API gateways? First things first, when we built the API gateway, there was no AWS, there were no third-party tools. So we built it for our internal tooling, and we wanted to open source it. But the thing is, it was too tied in to a lot of Adobe's internal services, so it really didn't make sense to open source it. That said, we still have it as an open source package. If you want, you can check it. Let's see. And yeah. The open source version has not been updated since quite some time. It's because we progressed a lot further, and basically it comes down to engineering time. We don't have anyone who's got time to maintain this, so that's why it's left. But this is the one that we run internally is more or less the same version, a lot more further right. Azure for the win? No for the win, for the loss. How many edge nodes to handle 2 billion calls? So 90%, I would say maybe even 95% of the traffic comes in via US East 1 region. There we have 40 nodes. I think it's 40. Yeah, it's 40 nodes of C4D XL. We don't run C4D XL for the compute because of compute reasons. We run it because of the network bandwidth associated with it. And we don't run 40 nodes because we need it. I think the CPU utilization is like less than 20 to 25%. We run it at 40 just because it's easier to spread the traffic across 40 nodes. We've had a lot of issues because of things like if someone uploads a huge multi-gigabit file, and when it goes to the gateway, if one node is handling that, then it's pretty much clogged up the entire pipeline. It's clogged up the entire connection for that. And it gets clogged not because the gateway itself is not performant, it's because the client might be uploading it from a slow network. For example, if you're in India and you have a 4 Mbps DSL line, which effectively runs at 1 Mbps, and you're trying to upload a 50 MB file, so you can imagine how slow it will be. So to basically to decongest, that's the reason why we have so many nodes running, and we keep it at minimum at that level again, just to spread out that traffic. Does Adobe use any third-party tools? Yeah, we use a lot of third-party tools. Splunk is pretty much our logging service. We have Splunk being run internally, so it's not hosted on Splunk Cloud. I don't really know how much of data is being handled by that, but I think it's safe to say it's in the range of multi terabytes per day, or maybe 1 petabyte. I don't know. Let's assume it's multi terabytes per day. There's a different team handling it, so a lot of work goes into improving and consolidating and commoditizing things. For example, we have a team which is running a container orchestrator and platform. You have us who are running the API gateway. The whole idea is to not do duplicate work, right? So you don't want one team who built the API gateway, and you don't want the second team to do the same thing over and over again. You don't want 5, and considering how many teams are there in Adobe, you don't want the same work being repeated over again, because you can imagine the amount of work being wasted, the amount of time being wasted if you do it over and over again, right? For monitoring, right now we are moving to Prometheus. We just last week I finished moving the last bits of work from, we were running on Datadog earlier, we moved to Prometheus. Again, Prometheus is hosted internally, and yeah, it's Paschim Vian asks, better cost-effective alternative to AWS. It burns a lot of money other than Azure. Cost-effective, it depends on how you're trying to optimize costs. Are you trying to optimize by reducing the engineering time? For example, I just told you we just completed Datadog to Prometheus migration, right? The whole reason was that for cost effectiveness, because Datadog was supposedly costing too much. I don't have access to any of the numbers, so don't ask me or don't quote me on any of the numbers. But the whole reason why we moved it was because of cost efficiency reasons. But the amount of time that we spent in bear in mind that not everyone is running state-of-the-art, cutting-edge Kubernetes, Docker containers, and cloud-native stuff. There's a lot of still legacy stuff is there, and software or agents like Datadog and New Relic, right? It makes it very easy to have an observability stack running on that. in the amount of time that we took to migrate everything from the Datadog to Prometheus, I think it would have easily eclipsed, the engineering time would have easily eclipsed the operational time or the operational expenses of that. But I don't know, maybe they know better than me. For in terms of cost effectiveness, other ways, in terms of sheer numbers, there are, I can take an entire session completely on cost effectiveness. If you're running on AWS itself, for example, if you're pulling in from, say, if you're using S3, instead of using public endpoints, use the VPC endpoints. That cuts down traffic and that cuts down the network costs. If you're doing calls over the public internet from one service to another service, use private endpoints, use VPC peering and private endpoints. Again, saves on traffic on NAT gateways, rather saves on cost on NAT gateways. So there's no really one universal rule for everything. I guess the easiest way to save more is look into things like cost reservation or savings plans or spot instances. Azure and GCP both have equivalents of reservations and cost and reservations and spot instances. So if your application can handle it, you can make use of it. As an API gateway, we can't really make really good use of spot instances because imagine this: you have a client who's uploading a multi-terabyte file, and a spot notice comes, and you have to terminate an instance. Now, after 1.99, as I say that it's a 2 terabyte file, and after 1.99 terabytes has been uploaded, the termination notice is over, and how do you migrate that, right? So for spot doesn't work for some workloads, obviously, but for others it works like that. Yeah, I've not used OpenStack, so I can't compare to it. I guess OpenStack is a Kubernetes distribution, which again, a lot of people say move to Kubernetes for effective utilization of resources, which is good. It is good if you have people who already know it. Otherwise, you have to end up retraining people to make efficient use of that, right? Would love to hear about a hard to reproduce bug you've encountered. Hard to reproduce bug. I don't know, man. There are so many I can't recall at the moment. I think we had this issue like just a few weeks back. We had this very weird issue where at a very random time for very random instances when they would spin up and when they would come into service for a very brief time for the first 1-2 seconds, DNS resolution would just fail, and it was very unpredictable. We had to try really hard to figure out, to make sense of why it was failing. We tried really hard. It was not reproducible at all. It would come, I don't know, once every, say, 100 auto scale ups. We tried different versions of our code. We tried different MEIs. We tried different instance types. We tried a lot of stuff. It was very hard to understand. We tried auto scaling. We had a hint that it was because of the way we are auto scaling. So we tried scaling up from 2 to 40 instances at a time. No go. We tried scaling up from 2 to 80 instances. Nothing happened. We tried scaling from 2 to 100 instances. And in that 100 instance, maybe 1 or 2 instances would have this DNS failure. But that was a very brief time, and then it would just recover by itself. But the problem was that the ELB did not know that the DNS resolution was failing for this node. So it would send traffic. The traffic would come to the node, and the node would say, I don't know about this. I don't know how to resolve it. So we were sending 502s back. When you're handling at 250K requests per second, one node can handle a lot of traffic. So it was The problem is that we could not ignore it because it was enough at a scale that was concerning to us, but we were still having a lot of issues. After a lot of debugging, a lot of looking around, a lot of reading, we found out that Route 53 has a hard cap of how many packets per second it can resolve, and that is a hard cap at 1024 packets per second. 100, yeah. So if you send Route 53 more than 1024 packets per second from one instance, then it is just going to silently ignore it and say route name resolution will just fail. And this is not recorded in any of their logs or in FR logs, so it was really, really difficult. We were able to figure it out because we have some really good account managers. They were really helpful, and AWS support has been really helpful for us. So that's one of the weirdest bugs. Nina, thus, what are the weird bugs you run because of kernel contract? Yeah, we had a lot of troubles with, especially in terms of contract. For those who don't know, contract is basically it's basically a table which keeps track of how many connections are being done, or rather, what connections are being done. I don't know how to explain this because it requires a little bit of networking knowledge. Basically, before you send out packets, the kernel needs to know where to send packets at. So the contract table maintains a reference of this this host has a traffic going or has a connection on this port for this say FD or whatever it is. Right? We have an alert now specifically for contract because when you have a whole burst of traffic coming to a specific node, if the contract gets overwhelmed, then it can't make any connections whatsoever. And you start running into, again, weird issues like timeouts and I don't know, it's just weird. It's like, and trying to figure out trying to figure out what was the reason for this. Again, it involves a lot of debugging, and thankfully I have really, really good colleagues. I mean, a lot of the kernel stuff is not up my alley. I have a lot of people who've been working at data centers, who've been working on embedded systems, and they really know some of their stuff and not a lot of the other stuff. So that helps. The other weirdest issue, it sort of ties in both with the cloud provider as well as with the kernel, is the way Azure networking works. Azure networking is really, really weird because the way they handle source NAT traffic matching and whatnot. So we've had issues where the SNAT would fail, and you would see things like, again, timeouts, gateway 502s. Debugging 502s is really, really hard. Ultimately, we have a couple of people who are extremely proficient with TCP dumps and Wiresharks. We end up pulling out dumps and analyzing it. So in case of this Azure SNAT issue, I had this colleague. He spent and also all due credit to Microsoft as well. Microsoft support was also quite helpful, and plus some of our other team members as well. So we literally spent something like 3-4 weeks doing a lot of packet captures, trying to make sense of why, what, how, why this failure is happening. Do you have service mesh in your or any data stack? We don't really use any service mesh at the moment, mainly because of the latency reasons. We're trying to reduce the layers as little as possible. Every little bit of layer adds to the latency. Even though the latency might be as minimal as, say, 5 or 3 milliseconds, it's still not acceptable to a lot of our clients. So this is the reason why we still don't use Kubernetes. We've been working on trying to use Kubernetes, but at this point, it's been adding a lot of unacceptable latency. So basically, yeah, no service mesh. Kanishkas, do you use serverless stuff? So we actually have a serverless. We are a serverless provider by ourselves. This is being run by by the other team. They are under same. They are in the same org as me. I briefly worked with a serverless team as well. It's called Adobe Runtime. It's essentially based on OpenWhisk. We have a lot of Apache OpenWhisk committers working on that project. So, so yeah, check it out. As for serverless use, there's a lot of dogfooding. I think, let me see. The latest, I don't know if you're aware of, there's this content management system called Adobe Experience Manager, AEM. It's pretty huge in the managed content management space. Talking about large newsrooms and whatnot, they use a lot of AEM. So the AEM was traditionally hosted on VM stuff, and I think they just launched AEM on serverless. So there's a lot of serverless workload being running on that. So for example, anything, if a newsroom uploads any files, there's a serverless function which will pick it up, process it, and make it ready for content management. I think it's called AEM Skyline. I think this is not, the last one is not by an Adobe employee, I guess. I don't think so. No, it's not. It's by a third party. So take a look at it. What is the most expensive mistake you made at Adobe? Expensive in terms of dollars. I don't think I've made any expensive mistake yet. So the thing is, a lot of the billing is handled at the financial level. It's something sort of which engineering is sort of shielded from, but not completely. Like, you are made aware of how much you're spending on what and where, but you know, I don't know if I've actually done any large expensive mistakes. I think the closest that it comes to expensive mistake in terms of, for me, an expensive mistake is, I guess, in terms of customer impact. I think there was this one time where I did, so the way we do releases is, it's a traditional A and B stack, right? You have a version of code, a version of the API gateway running on A stack, or A stack, A and B stack, blue, green, whatever you call it. You have an existing version running on A stack. You have the newer version being deployed to B stack. But because of the sheer amount of traffic, we can't just flip it directly. We can't do 0 to 100% traffic flip. It's again not because that we cannot handle it. It's because we've had evidence, and we've seen this past, because AWS's ELB systems, they themselves will go down. So that is the level of traffic we are dealing with. So we have to move traffic slowly. So it's like, we move it we start at 10%, then we move 25%, and then 50, then 75, then 100. So we move traffic gradually. I think the most expensive mistake is that I was doing it in a region which doesn't really have a lot of traffic. So it was the US West region. It didn't really have a lot of traffic. So I said, okay, this doesn't have a lot of traffic, so let me just move 0 to 100. Bad decision. The DLBs were overwhelmed, and the service just started going down. And in that case, I had to do an emergency flip back. And also because of the way DNS caching works, we were still getting a lot of traffic. And yeah, I guess that is most expensive mistakes I've done. In terms of other expensive mistakes, like, say leaving an instance out for public access, leaving an S3 bucket out for public access. There's a lot of internal tooling which checks for things like this. So the moment you have an instance out open in public, you get an email sent to you right away, and you're supposed to reply to it. It's like, drop everything, fix this. If you don't, it goes, an escalation goes until you're supposed to fix it, and then there's going to be further and further investigation and see, it's like, why was this so? So yeah, we take a lot of precautions trying to avoid things like that, but and I guess I'm happy to say that, something like that, not really done a huge expensive mistakes in that. So that's what. Is it Adobe or Adobe? Yeah, it's Adobe. Adobe. It's ADOBE. So it's Adobe. Nikhil asks, what happens if you're on call, there's an incident, but you on yourself, you feel it's going to long to figure out fixed issue. So our on-call system is not one person handling the on-call. There is an on-call primary, there's an on-call secondary. So if you're the primary on-call, and if it's taking you a long time, if another incident happens, first thing is the incident management team will figure out if the second incident is related to this or not. And if it is not related to this, then they will ask the secondary to come in. And the secondary person will take care of it. In addition, there's a lot of, our team is we help ourselves a lot. The camaraderie within a team is very good. Like, for example, if I'm on call and an incident happens early in the morning my time or late at night my time, and there's a colleague, say from US, he will tell me, hey, you go back to sleep, I'll take care of this. So that's where team culture and team spirit helps. So, but yeah, in essence, if there's an on-call incident and you're engaged, the secondary gets pinged. If the secondary is also engaged, then the manager gets pinged. And most of our managers are pretty technically proficient, so they are often, most of the time our managers do end up getting on the call, and they help us and they guide us, because they themselves were individual contributors at an earlier stage. So that helps in giving confidence. How often do these incidents occur? I don't know. It really depends. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on RNG. It depends on if some fly decides to go and crash into a router, which causes an outage. It depends if an alligator goes and chews on some fiber optic cable. It depends. There have been there have been times when my on-call rotation was very silent. I haven't had a single page. There have been times when almost every single day I was involved in something or the other. I think like my on-call rotation, like 3 weeks back, 3-4 weeks back, it was like the last 4 days, every single day there was some incident which is happening. And yeah, it gets very exhausting and gets very tiring. From your slides, can I talk about processor developer tooling improvement? I've sort of talked about this. It's, for example, anything to improve the developer experience. For example, if you are building a software or if you're writing code, if you don't have any automated CI process, then but you have tests. Every time you're supposed to compile it, build it, run it, test it, and instead of doing that all this by yourself manually, we pick up things like automating it, setting up a GitHub webhook which will trigger some job, maybe a Jenkins job, whatever, to run automatic tooling, things like that. Or for example, if it can be also something like a documentation update, especially as on-call. You might be referring to your on-call manual, but that manual does not have, say, there was a new region that you added, or there was a new service that you added, but the service was not updated in on-call manual. So you can pick up a developer tooling or a process improvement tooling to update the documentation, so it's easier for you if something goes wrong. I hope that answers that question, Danish. I think there was another question in chat, on Slack rather. Kaigo asked, how did you start off as a DevOps? What learnings were crucial along the road? So I see a lot of people who are, especially now, and it goes back to, because it's so lucrative to be a DevOps engineer because you get extra money and whatnot, then they try to jump onto the DevOps stuff. So I did not move to DevOps till I got third-party validation. By third-party validation, in the sense that like I said, I used to work on databases. I used to write SQL queries. I used to write stored procedures and whatnot. As a side job on a volunteer basis, I used to run servers for events. For example, if you're in Bangalore, you may have heard of Bakam Bangalore. I used to run the servers for that. I migrated Bakam Bangalore's website from a shared host to a VPS, added some mail servers, added some extra. Basically, whatever new things that we added, I was setting it all up. Right. So I learned a lot from that. And I realized, and even before that, I've been fiddling and playing with Linux since a long time. Like I'm talking, I think my first time I started Linux was it was in 2000. So I've been working on Linux since a long time. Having a good grasp of Linux helped in making the jump because I knew what was at stake. And because I knew Linux and because I knew a little bit of networking essentials, I could relate to the cloud infrastructure. I knew what VPC meant. I knew what subnets were. So and having a little bit of programming knowledge also helped because now you know what build tools are. If you're and I didn't do a CS degree. My degree was in actually electronics and communications. So my programming is my programming strength is not really that great. I lack especially in terms of algorithms and whatnot. So, but still, in general, as DevOps, you need to know how to debug stuff, which means you need to understand what you're reading. I see a lot of people who see a big error log and they just give up. They don't even bother reading that. If you cannot read a log and if you cannot make sense of a log, then you should not be in DevOps. It's as simple as that. If you don't know what DNS is, you should not be in DevOps. It's as simple as that. In fact, anytime I do an interview, I ask, my first question is some question on it's going to be some question on DNS, because if you don't know how DNS works, and I don't mean by running a DNS server. I'm not really asking you to run a DNS server. My questions are fairly simple. What does this record mean? If you cannot understand how a DNS lookup works, then how are you going to figure out where or what server is it pointing at? And yeah, so two things which is probably mandatory as DevOps. One is how to read stuff and how to debug stuff. And I guess Linux is sort of optional because there are still some people running Windows servers, but overwhelmingly it's all Linux servers. So Linux also, I guess, is mandatory-ish types, but being able to read and debug and a general sense of curiosity in figuring out how and why it works or how and why it fails, it's a must. Ninad was asking what stuff from your DBA days carried over to infra side and served you well. I admit that I really haven't worked a lot on databases since I have moved away from them, but you will find that most applications, excuse me, you'll find that most applications still will have some element of database in it. Even though it's not stressed to similar levels. In that case, my DBA knowledge has helped a lot. I have severely, I won't say shouted. I try not to shout. I don't want to be labeled as someone who shouts and scares newbies. But I've had a stern words with developers who've ignored things like indexing, who have no idea how inquiries work, for example. Specifically in terms of infra, my knowledge of DBA has come in really handy when we were setting up multi-region replications, or when we are doing disaster recovery drills, because a lot of people uh, they don't really understand how replication works. They don't really understand what is read replica and stuff like that. So and they don't understand why. There's been a bunch of other things, like some queries running slowly, and they've not even been able to figure out why is that. So things like that has really helped me over. Excuse me. Sathyabhat asks, how did I become an AWS hero? How has it helped in our career? So the AWS hero is a nomination. You don't get to, you cannot apply to be a hero. Although there's a new community builder program that AWS has launched recently, so you can check that out. It's not quite the same as hero, but you get a lot of benefits, like being able to connect with the AWS SMEs. But basically, my heroes are nominated by, let me just send a link over. So that's the link for the community builders. Heroes are nominated by AWS employees, so there's no nomination, there's no submission form that you have to fill. So hero is basically it's sort of a recognition for the work that you've done to the community in terms of outreach, in terms of blogging, in terms of talks, in terms of general help. In my career, honestly, the hero is a nice pat on my back for me. It's not specifically helped me in terms, because I was not doing stuff to become a hero. I was doing stuff because I was genuinely interested in it. One of the things which I really like is I like community building, and I like running communities. And that's why I'm in this line. That's why I used to run the AWS user group Bangalore. That's why I used to run Baka Bangalore. I really like building and running communities, right? And because of this work on running stuff, you get a lot of insight. For example, I have run events where we have 1,000 people coming in. It sort of really puts a stress on, improves your communication skills, your email skills, how to say no. How to say no is a very hard thing for us, especially for Indians, because we are so used to saying yes. Even if you know something is not possible, you will still say yes when you actually mean no. So from that point of view, even before I became a hero, all of these things helped me. Post becoming a hero, I attended Reinvent last year. I can't Reinvent this year has been cancelled because of the whole COVID, but I attended Reinvent last year. I got a close-up selfie with Dr. Werner Vogels, which is like, whoa, okay. He's a CTO of Amazon, rather AWS, if you don't know him. I got to talk to people like, I don't know if you know Jedberg. Jedberg is one of the co-founders of Reddit, Jeremy Edberg, and recently I also got a chance to talk to Colin Pavikal, who runs Taskman. So you get to talk to a lot of really, really smart people, really good people, and you make this. You get to network with these people, and they know who you are. So if you are ever trying to move to a different job, or if you're trying to get in touch with an AWS SME, then it's helped me a lot. And as heroes, we do get some early access. Like we know what's coming up, but because of NDAs in practice, we can't really reveal it. But it's sort of if you are, for example, if you're building some tooling, or if you're running, if you're doing some content creation, like some tutorials, or I don't know, some courses, then these sort of things helps you prepare your course, your content ready just in time for the release. What training programs can you avail at work? So we have access to Safari books or O'Reilly Learning. That's at an Adobe wide. We also have access to New York Times, and there's a whole bunch of other general learning stuff. In addition, there's a learning fund. So every year you get some amount of money. That money varies across countries, and you can get to use that fund to get yourself a plural site or get yourself some certification course. If it is a certification, then you can get it reimbursed as well. If it's a training, you can get it reimbursed. In sometimes individual teams themselves will go out and get access. For example, my team has got access to Linux Academy, and also got us access to the Kubernetes course, which helped us. So things like that. Akash asks, what skills does Adobe look for in a DevOps candidate? So hiring in Adobe is not for the company, it's the individual team which does hiring. So Adobe doesn't hire for Adobe, it's individual teams hiring for Adobe. So, and that depends on team to team. It depends on what the team is specifically doing. Like in my case, my team, when we are looking for people, we look for people with obviously Linux and extremely sharp networking skills, even though my networking skills were not really that great, but it was good enough for me to get in. And of course, a little bit of programming knowledge also is required. Because we are the API gateway, we are expected to have good networking, because a lot of times we are the first interface with the customer. So when people say, we can't access this API, then we have to check and we have to investigate why it's not working. So networking skills are expected. On the other side, if you are, say, going into the container platform team, then they might expect you to know Kubernetes inside out, because if they are running on Kubernetes, which they are right now. So it really varies from team to team. If it's a ops candidate for a desktop platform, for example, something like Photoshop, then things like automated builds, daily builds, SSL, rather certification, things like that. So it depends from team to team. There's no general guideline or philosophy as such. Yeah, that's that. If there's any other questions, I can take them up. Otherwise, yeah, let me know. Nothing? Okay, I guess we can stop then. And Kanishk?
Yeah, I think we can stop recording now. So thank you for doing this. It went over an hour, and it was very engaging. Thank you for doing this.
So yeah, if you still have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, you can just ping me on Slack there. If there's any way I can help you, let me know. Don't ask me for AWS credits. I can't give you. I don't have access to it. And that said, AWS, Azure, GCP, all three are good and really good free tiers. So make use of that. But don't ask me for AWS credits. But if there's any way I can help you in terms of ops, in terms of tooling, process improvements, finance, whatever it is, let me know. I'll try my best. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for the amazing talk, Satya sir.
Yes, and no sir, please.
Okay, thanks, Satya. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.